Welcome to this online service at City of Hope.
Say, hey neighbor, no pain, no gain. Now, how many of you know that our human nature is to avoid pain? At all costs, we want to avoid pain. If you touch a hot plate, your brain's natural reaction is going to be to remove yourself from that painful situation. And it's not wrong to avoid pain. It's a good thing. Jesus himself, when he was praying in the garden just before the crucifixion, he said, Father, if it is your will, then take this cup from me. In Afrikaans, hy sê, Here, hierdie lydingsbeker, wil jy nie dit wegvat van me, this cup of suffering, this cup of pain, would you remove this or take it away from me? Yet not my will, but yours be done. So we see even Jesus, in a sense, wanted to avoid pain. Our natural instinct is always to avoid it. Our brains are trained to avoid pain. But there's a difference between ordinary and extraordinary people. And the difference between the two is our ability to deal with pain. You see, you don't win a World Cup, rugby, without some pain. Pain is part of the game. You don't win a marathon without some pain. You don't finish a marathon without some pain. You don't even have to win it, but just to finish it, there's going to be some pain. I remember just before COVID, just before we moved to Kimberley as well, God had healed me supernaturally of a knee condition that I battled with for about 10 years. And I set in my sights to run a half a marathon at the time, just as a testimony of God healing my knees. I couldn't run for 10 odd years. And what happened is I started training, and I don't know about you, but when I reach 500 meters, when I haven't jogged for a while, when I reach 500 meters, everything in my body starts screaming at me. Any runners here? At the 500 or the 800 mark, my ankles, my toes, the little cushions under my toes, my knees, my hips, everything shouts out, you are crazy. Why not sit behind the TV and watch sport? It's much easier than to run out here. Come on, how many of you know what I'm talking about? And then when you get to the 3-kilometer mark, this body starts rebelling again, and it shouts out, it says, this is too painful. You are punishing me. You are a cruel master. You know what I'm talking about? And then here by 5 kilos is another pain threshold that we reach, where the body just goes into complete rebellion. The body accuses you of things, of being sadistic. But you know what? When you break that 5 kilos pain threshold, I've learned that after 5 kilos, I can do 10, I can do 15, and I even did a 21. And so in life, it's very similar. There are pain thresholds that we're reaching, and unless we break through those pain thresholds, we will never fulfill our full potential. We will never fulfill our full potential if we don't learn how to break through the pain thresholds. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary people is the ability to deal with pain, is the ability to break their pain threshold. Somebody once said, never trust a man who walks without a limp. Referring to Jacob, who wrestled with God and came away limping. You know, even in his wrestle with God, there was some pain induced. And you know what? When somebody has gone through pain in life, be it physical pain or be it emotional pain or be it whatever pain, there's something that happens. There's a maturity that comes. There's a sincerity that comes in our hearts when we have wrestled with some pain and we are walking with a slight limp afterwards. I made the statement, if you've never hurt in your life, you've never lived. If you've never experienced pain, you've never loved. If you've never experienced pain, you've never led in your life. Because if you want to be a parent, if you want to be a spouse, if you want to be a leader, a business leader, or in church or wherever, in whatever part of society, you're going to experience some pain. It's part and parcel of life. Anything worth gaining comes with some pain. Anything worth gaining in life will induce some pain on us. And so God is calling us to break this pain threshold. Just some thoughts about pain. Pain comes, number one, in different forms. Pain can be emotionally, can be relationally, and I think a lot of our pain comes relationally because we deal with people. We deal with people at home, we deal with people at work, we deal with our extended family, you deal with your mother-in-law. Pain comes in different forms. It can be emotional, it can be relational. How many of you know that pain can be physical? When one of our staff members, Nancy, our city kids coordinator and champion, she and her husband Eddie, about 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, they were so excited they were going on a 1-week golf holiday down in Nice. Now, somebody had blessed them with a house, and they golf fanatics, and so they were going to play 6 or 7 courses during that week. And before they played their first game, she just took something out of the boot of the car, a very light object, but she had just bent in a way that was not right, and she slipped one of her discs. And she was bedridden for nearly 2 months. She couldn't touch a golf club. Now, those of you who know Nancy, she'd go crazy because she just loves her golf and she's an active person. But for 2 months, she had to do all her work lying down on her bed. You see, pain comes to all of us in some form at some time. And we can't predict when it happens. It comes in different forms, and it comes in its own time and frame and timeline or time frame. We don't know when it's going to come. It might be the loss of a loved one. I just spoke to somebody after the first service who said a brother was ill, and then a sister-in-law, they weren't married anymore, but the sister-in-law came to see the brother and visit him in hospital. And in the time that she came here, she came down with this new influenza 2 virus or like a bird flu, and within 4 days, she passed away. They didn't plan for it. There was no time to prepare themselves, but suddenly this pain of loss came in their life on its own time. We don't always have control about that. But one thing is sure, it will come to all of us in some form, in some time. Number 3 and number 4 says pain comes also as a price tag of growth. You see, we will not grow without pain. No pain, no pain, no gain. You see, if I don't break that 500-meter pain threshold, I'm not growing to the 3 kilometers margin. If I don't break through that 3 kilos pain threshold, I can't grow to the 5 kilos. If I don't break through the 5 kilos pain threshold, I can't go to run 10 or 20 Ks. And so pain comes, that's the natural price tag of growth. Without pain, I stay in my comfort zone. Come on, without pain, I'm not willing to do the things that I haven't done. I'm just staying in my comfort zone where it's convenient to me. And number 5, pain comes to expose my pain threshold. It shows me where my threshold is. Now, I took some notes from Pastor Leonard Stone when he was here with our TCN conference, and he talked to leaders about when leadership pains. And he made this statement, he says, pain is not your enemy, but can be your best friend. Pain is not your enemy, but can be your best friend. And we need to learn how to make pain our best friend. Now, let me just qualify. I don't believe that God necessarily causes pain, but I believe that God says, I will use pain. God doesn't cause all things, but God will surely use all things and make it work together for our good. And so the pain doesn't necessarily come from God. Most of the time it doesn't come from God. But He will use it for our good. He will use it because He has our best interest at heart. But our inability to handle pain correctly will cause pain to compound itself. And so every day comes with its own problems. We know Jesus said that, right? Elke dag. Every day comes with its own challenges. If I don't deal with today's pain, it accumulates to tomorrow. And I don't deal with it tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day. And then one day something happens that unravels me completely, and I need to deal with my compound pain. That's why Jesus was so clear, not only Him, but also the Old Testament, that said, within 24 hours, if somebody had done something against you, forgive them. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Within 24 hours, let it go. Because you cannot deal tomorrow with the compounded pain of today and yesterday and the day before. And so I believe God is calling on us as His people, as His church, to become better at dealing with pain. You see, if we don't deal with pain, our hearts become hardened. Our hearts become calloused. And we become like the priest and the Levite, of whom we talked last week, What did the priest and the Levite do? Their hearts were so hardened that they walked past the man that was left dying and bleeding next to the road, and they could not even see him or feel his pain. So hard was their hearts. If we don't deal with pain well, we become professional Christians. Professional Christians that walks past those who are dying and bleeding next to the road, and we don't feel their pain. And God is saying, no, I haven't called you to be a professional Christian. I've called you to be a real Christian that can feel others' pain. I think another thing that's important is that we need to learn how to hear the voice of God in the midst of our pain. God is present in your pain. God is speaking to us in our pain. And when we learn to hear His voice, we will learn how He's working all things together for our good, even amidst the pain. Now, just to qualify the fact that I said all people experience pain, almost every great Bible hero experienced pain, and I just want to highlight a few of them. Abram was childless for nearly a century, was 99 years old when God only gave him a child, and then God asked him to offer that child. Jacob lost his beloved Rachel. He lost his beloved son Joseph. He had to deal with that pain of loss. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery. Moses lost his family 3 times. David, for a long time, was regarded as an illegitimate child. And that's why he had to shepherd the sheep and didn't have the privilege of being in the house with the other brothers. Jesus himself suffered the most severe pain. We read that in Isaiah 53, prophesying that he would be despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. And when Jesus is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, Luke 22:44, it says, and being in anguish, Jesus prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. He had anguish. He had emotional pain. He had been betrayed by one of his closest. He knew what was coming. There's going to come some physical pain on his body. Not only that, he's going to take the illness and the disease and the sickness of every person that ever walked on earth. He's going to take upon himself in that moment on the cross. And so Jesus was one who knew pain. And then finally, the Apostle Paul was one that knew pain. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 11, he says, are they servants of Christ? He's now referring to other apostles. He says, I know I sound like a madman, but I have served him far more. I have worked harder, been put into prison more often, been whipped times without number, and faced death again and again. 5 different times the Jewish leaders gave me the 39 lashes, like they gave Jesus. 3 times I was beaten with rods, and once I was stoned. Paul at another place writes, and he says, I am in pains of childbirth until Christ is formed in you. Now, those of you who are parents, how many of you know that for you to raise a child, for you to mature a child, equals pain? And I don't want to be all doom and gloom about parenthood, but that's the reality, isn't it? For us to bring a child that is at this level of maturity, to bring him to that level of maturity, it equals pain. And Paul says that in another place. He says, I make up in my body what is lacking in the church. I have to take the hit here to make up for the lack of maturity among the church. That's what Paul is saying. And now, for you as a parent, that's exactly what you're doing. You take the hit in your body for what is lacking in your family, in your children. You pay the price until they come of age and they come to maturity, and then there's a bit of a release and a relief in your heart. And so Paul says, I know, I go into pains of childbirth. I feel the pain to see you mature. You see, growth pains calls all of us out of our comfort zone. Because in our comfort zone, we're not going to grow. And so that's why we're hitting these pain thresholds. It's an invitation to grow. We can only grow to the level that our pain threshold allows us. And so that's why there's this call to go higher. In Pastor Leonard's sermon at TCN, he referred to the Navy SEALs, and I just want to highlight a few thoughts on them. He talked about their pain threshold and what they would do in their training. Out of 200 Navy SEALs that start the year training, only 10 will finish up. 5%. Only 10 out of 200. And what they have is they have got a bell that you can go and ring. And when you reach your pain threshold, when you reach that point where you're so overwhelmed by the pain that you say, I cannot take one step, cannot do one rep anymore, then what they do is they go and wring themselves out. Come on, they wring themselves out. Now, statistically, it's been proven that those Navy SEALs, remember, they've been taken through pain thresholds. They've broken already through some pain threshold. They're not at the 500 or the 5 or the 3 kilos. They've been pushed way beyond that. That those Navy SEALs typically wring out at 60% of their true pain threshold. In other words, 40%, they've already been pushed to the limit, but 40% of their potential goes untapped because they wring out. And I believe this word this morning is for someone here, sitting here today, that said, I'm about to wring out. Pastor, I've had enough. I've had too much. I'm so overwhelmed with this pain that I'm suffering, be it emotional pain, maybe it's financial pain, I don't know if it's physical pain in your body, relational difficulties, and you're just saying, Pastor, I want to just lock out, I want to just wring out, and God is saying, don't wring out, my son, don't wring out, my daughter, because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. The potential within you is much greater than the pain that you're experiencing right now, but you have to break through your pain threshold. I'm calling you to another level. I'm calling you to break your pain threshold. Like I said earlier, you can't win a World Cup without pain. Pain is part of the game. Pastor Leonard illustrated it so well. They said, you see, we take pain personal. Somebody persecutes us at work. Somebody persecutes us in our family. If somebody says something nasty against us, they stab us in the back and we take it personal. And he explained it so well. He says they don't tackle the number 10 in rugby because he's the number 10. They tackle him because he carries the ball. The moment you and I catch the ball, we become a target. The moment we catch the ball of responsibility, we become a target. The moment you catch the ball of parenthood, you become a target. The moment you catch a ball of becoming a manager at your work or a business owner, you become a target. And don't take it personal. You know what? We tend to feel sorry for ourselves. We go on a pity party. But at the end of the day, you and I, we caught the ball. And when you catch the ball, somebody is coming for you because you're carrying the ball of responsibility. Can I share with you quickly 3 ways to unlock the power of pain in our life? 3 ways to break through our pain thresholds. You ready for that? Number 1, pain simplifies my priorities. Pain simplifies my priorities. With no pain, it's easy to major on the minor things in life. With no pain, my comforts and my conveniences are very important to me. But when pain hits, all of that goes out of the door. And the truly important things in life becomes important to me. The moment when Nancy had that disc slip, suddenly her priorities changed. I remember the other day listening to something on the radio interview, and they interviewed a gospel artist who many years ago was in a car crash and the car caught fire, and she had sustained some very serious burn wounds. She was in hospital for 3 weeks. And she described the pain that she experienced that 3 weeks, that burning, the pain of the burn wounds. And she said, suddenly it just changes everything in my life. It reprioritized everything in my life. The things that was so important to me beforehand became much less important. And other things that I took for granted suddenly became very much important. It's easy to complain about life and about all the things that doesn't go well until we suffer pain. And suddenly our priorities is shifted. It's true. Suddenly you get a diagnosis maybe of cancer or illness, and suddenly it changes our priorities. A loved one is critically ill or passes away, and suddenly it changes our priorities, changes what is really important to us, brings us back to the important things in life. And so, whatever pain you're experiencing right now, allow it to refocus your priorities, to simplify what is important to your life. And God is using pain. He's not causing it. It's not His heart. As a father, It's not my heart ever to induce pain on my children unless I'm disciplining them, okay? But other than that, it's not my heart to induce pain upon them. It's not God's heart to induce pain on us, but He will use it. And if you're suffering pain, go to the Lord and say, God, where's my priorities wrong? Help me to get my priorities right. Number 2, pain purifies my passions. Pain purifies my passion. David writes in Psalm 51:10, he says, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit in me, or renew the right spirit in me. Just contextually, David writes this after he commits adultery with Bathsheba. And after he commits adultery, he murders her husband Uriah. But if you go and read the whole story, the chapter starts off and it says, in the springtime, when kings went out to war, David stayed in the palace. In the springtime, when it was customary for kings to go out to war, to push their pain threshold, to excel, to grow, David stayed in the comforts of the palace. He wasn't where he was supposed to be. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and eventually he did the wrong thing. And so he caused tremendous pain. He broke up a family. He committed adultery. And then he conceived a child with Bathsheba out of this adultery. And God's judgment was that the child would pass away. David fasted and prayed, but God said the child would still die, and the child passed away. And out of that pain that he suffered, that pain of loss, self-induced pain. Sometimes we suffer self-induced pain, right? Sometimes we suffer pain that is induced by somebody else or something else, but sometimes we suffer self-induced pain. This was self-induced pain that David suffered. And he said, God, create in me a clean heart. Purify my heart. Purify my motivations. Purify my agendas. Purify my passions, because my passions got twisted. I had lust in my heart for this woman, and that set this whole thing in motion. So purify my heart, David says. And so God uses pain not only to simplify our priorities, but also to purify our passions. And I hope this morning, if you're feeling pain, you can say, God, purify my passions. You see, because most of our pain, I think, comes from people. Isn't it true? Think with me. Doesn't most of our pain come from people and relationships? Because relationships and family is complex. Marriage is complex. Pastor Leonard said this when he was with us. He says, if our greatest pain is people, then our greatest challenge is forgiveness. If our greatest pain is people, then our greatest challenge is forgiveness. That's why Jesus says within 24 hours, before the sun goes down, forgive. Let it go. Let it go. Forgive, forgive, forgive. And I don't know about you, but forgiveness always seems easier when somebody else needs to do it. It's easy for me as a pastor when somebody comes and they pour out their heart and all their problems. It's easy for me to tell them, you need to forgive that person. The Bible says it. But when I need to forgive somebody, it becomes more difficult, right? And because most of our pain comes by means of people, we have to forgive, 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 until we break through that pain threshold. Can I give you the final one? Jesus says this in Luke 22:42, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup of pain from me, if I can add that. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Number 3, pain clarifies my purpose. So pain simplifies my priority. It purifies my passions. But finally, it clarifies my purpose. Jesus says, Father, I would, in my flesh, I would love to avoid this pain of the cross. But your purpose be done. Your will be done in my life. And in his pain, in Jesus' pain on the cross, he found his greatest purpose to be our Savior, to be our deliverer, to be our Redeemer. That woman, that gospel artist that I listened to on the radio, she said, She said, some days, many years now after this incident, some days I long back to those 3 weeks of pain because I felt so close to God. When I didn't ask Him for money, and I didn't ask Him for this, and I didn't ask Him for that. And I just asked Him, Lord, into your hands I commit my spirit. God, without you, I cannot bear this pain. She says, sometimes I long for that pain because of the closeness. You see, the purity it brought in my heart towards God. The other thing that she said is that pain gave her purpose. She before that, it was important to her to have big crowds of people that she would sing to, and it was important to sell CDs. And she says, but afterwards, she found purpose, and God gave her purpose to use her music to minister to people who go through pain. You see, in her greatest pain, she found her great life purpose. And she says, I can't explain how fulfilled I am finding my life purpose. But it was pain that brought me to purpose. And oftentimes God would use that. You might go through a divorce. God said, I want to use you to encourage others that's gone through that pain. You might have suffered a loss of a loved one. God may want to use you to encourage and comfort others who go through that same pain. There's purpose in pain. The Bible says in Hebrews 12, for the joy set before Jesus, He endured the cross and its shame, and I want to add there, and its pain, because it was very painful. And He sat at the right hand of God and He's interceding for us. And what is Jesus interceding for us? I think one of the things He's praying today is, God, help my sons and daughters to endure pain. Help my sons and daughters to embrace pain, to break through their pain threshold so that they can fulfill their full potential. Jesus is interceding for us. And when you and I go through difficult times, that we wouldn't clock out at 60% of our pain threshold, that we wouldn't clock out at 40%. You're sitting here as a father and you consider clocking out as a dad, you consider clocking out as a mum, you consider clocking out as a teacher, you're working in government, you consider clocking out because you're moeg and sick and sat for all the politics going on. God is saying to you, my son, my daughter, do not clock out. There's more in you. Greater is He that lives in you than he that is in the world. Let my pain, or let your pain unlock my purpose in your life. Because there's no gain without pain.